Welcome to the Smart Keys podcast. Imagine your company's most guarded 10-year strategic plans, your proprietary algorithms, and, your most sensitive financial data.
Right.
They're all heavily encrypted, entirely secure by today's standards, and just sent across the internet. But what if I told you that highly organized hackers are already recording and storing that encrypted data today, just waiting for the exact machine that will effortlessly crack it open?
Yeah, and that scenario is not science fiction. I mean, the capability to break modern encryption along with the power to revolutionize molecular discovery and financial modeling, it really hinges on technology that is actively moving out of the physics lab right now.
Out of the lab and into commercial server racks, right? Which is exactly why we are taking a deep dive today into this really comprehensive guide by Felix Römer. It's from smartkeys.org, titled Quantum Computing, Preparing Your Business for the Next Leap.
It's a fantastic piece.
It really is. And we're treating this technology as a near-term business reality for you today. The goal here is to just cut through the heavy academic math and give you a plain language, business-first view of what this tech can and cannot do.
Exactly. So you can actually start planning practical steps right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about revolutionizing an industry or, securing our networks, we have to understand the fundamental shift here. We all use classical computers every single day.
Sure, constantly.
Right. So how does the core technology actually change when we abandon that classical architecture and move to quantum systems?
Well, the shift fundamentally changes the basic unit of information. I mean, in every classical computer, from the smartphone in your pocket to the massive server farms running the internet, information is processed in bits.
Zeros and ones.
Exactly. A bit is entirely deterministic. It is either a 0 or a 1. It functions purely as a binary off-or-on switch.
Right. Which means when a classical computer tries to solve a complex problem, it has to calculate every possible answer sequentially, one by one.
Yeah, exactly.
But the text mentions quantum computers use qubits, which operate in a state of superposition. And honestly, here is where people usually get lost.
Oh, absolutely. It's not intuitive at all.
Right. The article mentions qubits map out both 0 and 1 with complex amplitudes. I need an ELI 5 here, explain like I'm 5.
Mm-hmm.
What does a complex amplitude actually mean for my data?
Okay, so think of a standard probability, like flipping a coin. You have a 50% chance of heads, 50% of tails.
Sure.
Those probabilities are always positive numbers, right? And they add up to 100%. But quantum physics operates completely differently. A qubit in superposition holds multiple possibilities simultaneously, and the amplitudes are essentially the hidden weights attached to those possibilities.
Okay.
And crucially, these complex amplitudes can be positive or negative.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a wave. If a positive wave peaks exactly where a negative wave dips, they just cancel each other out.
That is interference, yeah. And that is the entire engine of quantum computing. Classical bits cannot cancel each other out in that way.
Right, they're just hardens and zeros.
Exactly. And when you add qubits together, the computational space scales exponentially. Every single time you add just one qubit, you literally double the state space of the system.
That is wild. To put some real-world perspective on that exponential growth, if I wanted to perfectly simulate a system of just 100 qubits on a classical computer, I would need to track 2 to the power of 100 of those amplitudes.
Which is a staggering number.
It's massive. That would require more memory than there are atoms in a drop of water. It is physically impossible to build a classical machine large enough to hold that data.
Which is exactly why quantum machines are necessary for specific classes of problems. But, and this is a big... But there is a massive catch when it comes to actually extracting the answer.
Right. It's not like you just print out a spreadsheet of all the answers at once.
No, not at all. The moment you measure a quantum system, a principle called the Born rule takes over. The massive, beautiful superposition of all those possibilities probabilistically collapses.
Just snaps into one reality.
Exactly. You do not get a magical readout showing every single possibility. You get a single sample.
Which means the entire art of quantum software is, I guess, manipulating the calculation before you measure it.
You hit the nail on the head.
And that brings us to the concept of entanglement. The text says entanglement links qubits so intimately that measuring one gives you immediate information about the other.
Yes.
So if solving a massive logistical maze classically is like walking down every dead end one by one until you finally stumble on the exit.
Taking forever, right.
Right. then quantum parallelism is like flooding the maze with water to explore every path simultaneously.
I love that analogy.
And then, through entanglement and interference, the waves bouncing down the wrong paths perfectly cancel each other out. That's the destructive interference, right?
Yes, exactly.
While the waves heading toward the correct exit compound and grow. So when the wave finally collapses, the water is pooled exactly at the exit.
That analogy is just perfect. You are actively steering the probabilities. You construct the algorithm so that destructive interference suppresses the incorrect answers, and constructive interference amplifies the correct one.
Because classical logic simply cannot mimic that coordination efficiently.
It can't. But we aren't living in a perfect quantum world yet. We are operating in what the article calls the NISQ era.
Right, NISQ, the noisy intermediate scale quantum era.
Yes. And noisy is the absolute critical word for business leaders to understand today. The biggest enemy of a quantum computer is decoherence.
Decoherence.
Yeah. The quantum state of a qubit is incredibly fragile. If it accidentally couples to the outside environment, if there is the slightest temperature fluctuation, a stray electromagnetic pulse from a nearby cable, or even cosmic rays.
Cosmic rays, seriously?
Seriously. Any of that happens, the delicate waves collapse prematurely. That is decoherence. It introduces noise and completely ruins the calculation.
So to fight that decoherence, companies are building totally different types of hardware.
Very different, yes.
If I'm a CTO trying to decide where to invest my cloud budget, I'm basically looking at a menu of intense engineering trade-offs.
You really are.
The first major option the article discusses is superconducting qubits.
Right, so superconducting processors rely on microscopic circuits made of materials that exhibit zero electrical resistance when cooled to extreme temperatures.
Okay.
The core component there is called a Josephson junction, which acts as a tiny, frictionless, nonlinear switch. They are incredibly fast. The gate operations, the actual computations, they happen in nanoseconds.
Wow, that's fast. And don't they also use the same silicon fabrication techniques that the traditional semiconductor industry uses?
They do, yeah. Which makes them, at least theoretically, easier to mass produce.
But the trade-off is the operating environment. You need massive cryogenic rigs to cool these chips down to near 0.01 Kelvin.
Yeah, it's intense.
For context, that is significantly colder than the vacuum of deep space.
It really is. Maintaining that temperature requires million-dollar room-sized dilution refrigerators. And they also require constant, highly complex calibration because the qubits tend to drift out of tune.
Okay, so that's superconducting. Then, on the other side of the trade-off, we have trapped ions.
Trapped ion platforms take a completely different approach. They actually take individual charged atoms, ions, confine them in a vacuum using intense electromagnetic fields, and then manipulate them by firing highly precise lasers.
Lasers in a vacuum. Got it.
Yeah. The trade-off here is speed versus stability. The operations are noticeably slower than superconducting qubits. However, trapped ions boast incredibly high fidelity.
High fidelity meaning trustworthiness, right? Like the answers are much more accurate before noise ruins them?
High fidelity and long coherence times, exactly. The qubits survive much longer before the environment destroys the superposition.
Okay, so they're stable.
Very stable. This makes trapped ion systems incredibly strong candidates for highly precise simulation tasks where you really need the data to remain intact for a longer calculation.
Makes sense. The article also mentions photonics, which uses actual particles of light.
Yes, photonics.
The massive advantage there seems to be temperature. They can operate at room temperature, and because they use light, they are incredible for secure, low-latency communication across long distances.
Absolutely.
We also see quantum annealers mentioned in the text.
Right, but it's important to note that annealers are not universal quantum computers. You cannot run just any algorithm on them.
Oh, really? How do they work then?
Instead of running gates, they physically map a specific math problem onto the hardware and then slowly evolve an energy landscape to find the lowest possible valley or ground state.
Okay, so they have a very specific use case.
Very specific. They are strictly designed for combinatorial optimization problems, things like complex supply chain routing. What's fascinating here is that the threshold theorem in quantum mechanics tells us that until we can actively correct the noise as it happens, we are inherently limited.
Right, because of that decoherence we just discussed.
Exactly. Because of the noise, full, scalable, fault-tolerant computation is still years away. We simply do not have the error correction capability built into the hardware yet.
So this raises a very practical question for anyone listening. If we do not have perfect fault-tolerant machines, And the current hardware requires a cryogenic freezer the size of a minivan.
Or a room full of lasers.
Yeah, right. How does a modern software team actually start using this today? I definitely shouldn't be ripping out my traditional servers to make room for this stuff.
No, please don't do that. You absolutely keep your classical infrastructure. The immediate future of this technology, and frankly, the only practical path forward for the next decade, is the hybrid workflow.
A hybrid workflow.
Yeah, you distribute the computational load across your existing high-performance computing systems and the specialized quantum processors.
It's the high-end kitchen analogy. Your classical computers are the prep cooks.
I love that one.
Right. They are doing all the data ingestion, the slicing and dicing, the input-output orchestration, and all the standard algorithmic sorting.
Yeah.
They're incredibly good at that.
But they are.
But then, for the one specific, impossibly complex optimization task, you hand the dish over to the master chef, the quantum computer, to finish the job.
Exactly. And then the chef hands it right back to the prep cooks to plate and serve.
That division of labor makes so much sense.
It's exactly how enterprise architecture is adapting. You offload only the specific subroutines that require searching vast, multi-dimensional solution spaces.
But I still don't have a 0.01 Kelvin freezer in my office building.
Yeah.
So how are my prep cooks actually handing the dish to the master chef?
Through the cloud. Cloud access has completely democratized this technology.
Of course, the cloud.
You access QPU's quantum processing units from major vendors like IBM, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon bracket. The vendors maintain the massive cryogenic rigs and the lasers in their own pristine laboratories.
And your team just submits the computational jobs over standard internet APIs. That significantly lowers the barrier to entry for a business. But let's talk about the software side for a second. The article mentions teams need to use SDKs or software development kits like Qiskit 1.x.
Yes, Qiskit is huge right now.
It also says developers need to transpile circuits with calibration-aware passes. Let's translate that out of computer science jargon. What does transpiling actually mean for my software team?
Transpiling is essentially translation. Your software engineers will write their quantum algorithms in a high-level, human-readable language like Python.
Sure.
But the quantum hardware doesn't understand Python. It only understands specific, highly calibrated physical instructions. Transpiling is the automated process of compiling that Python code down into literal microwave pulses or laser flashes that physically poke the qubits.
Wow, okay. And the calibration-aware part?
Well, because we were in the noisy NISQ era, no two qubits behave exactly the same way on any given day.
The drift, right, like you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. So a calibration-aware compiler looks at the specific quantum chip you are targeting that morning, sees which qubits are a little noisier than the others, and actively rewrites your algorithm on the fly to avoid the bad qubits and prioritize the stable ones.
That is incredibly clever. But the software team also has to code differently to manage the noise, right? The text makes a major point about managing circuit depth.
Yes, circuit depth is a huge constraint right now. It's essentially the number of consecutive operations, or gates, you perform on a qubit.
Okay.
Every single time you apply a gate to steer those probabilities, you introduce a tiny fraction of noise. If your circuit is too deep, if you do too many operations, the noise compounds until it completely overwhelms the signal.
And your answer just becomes random garbage.
Exactly, pure noise.
So the goal is to get in, utilize the quantum parallelism, and get out before the decoherence ruins the calculation. You have to keep the operations incredibly shallow.
That's the name of the game right now. Shallow circuits.
Okay, so we've established the mechanics. We know qubits scale exponentially but fight decoherence. We know the hardware is accessible via the cloud, and we know we use hybrid workflows to run shallow circuits.
Right.
Now we have to ask the critical or strategic question. Why should a business leader invest time, staff, and budget into this right now? Where is the actual, tangible return on investment?
The return on investment appears the moment a business stops treating quantum computing as a magical solution for everything and starts mapping highly specific, computationally impossible bottlenecks to the unique capabilities of quantum simulation.
The article specifically highlights pharma and life sciences as the immediate high-impact areas.
Yes, and this actually traces back to the physicist Richard Feynman and later Seth Lloyd, who proved that quantum computers can simulate physical systems without the exponential overhead that destroys classical machines.
Well, that makes sense.
Right. When a pharmaceutical company attempts to simulate molecular interactions or predict protein folding, they are fundamentally trying to calculate the behavior of electrons.
And electrons obey quantum mechanics. not classical physics.
Exactly. When classical computers try to simulate quantum electron interactions, the mathematical combinations just explode. The computers choke.
They just can't handle the state space.
They can't. But a quantum computer inherently operates on the same mathematical rules as the molecule itself. It speaks the same language.
Oh, wow.
By leveraging this, pharmaceutical companies can vastly enrich the accuracy of their simulations. This drastically shortens the R&D cycle and significantly reduces the number of physical, real-world lab iterations needed to find a viable drug compound.
That's huge.
Eh,
I can see how simulating molecules helps pharma at a microscopic level,
Right.
but the article also talks about energy and finance. How does quantum simulation translate to those macro industries?
Well, in the energy sector, businesses are using quantum-inspired optimization to manage complex grid flows. But returning to the molecular level for a second, material science benefits, just like pharma.
All for building physical things?
Yeah, companies are using quantum simulation to design entirely new, highly efficient battery chemistries with targeted thermal properties.
That is fascinating. And in finance, the text mentions portfolio optimization and risk aggregation.
Right. It's about finding the absolute best route or strategy when millions of overlapping factors influence each other. Quantum test runs are revealing hidden structures in financial data that classical methods simply cannot see.
Because classical methods just get bogged down in the complexity.
Exactly. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, optimizing workflows and discovering new products is the offensive strategy. The defensive strategy is arguably much more urgent. And this brings us back to the scenario you opened with.
The cybersecurity threat.
Yes, the elephant in the room. Shor's algorithm.
Shor's algorithm. Let's talk about that.
It's a theoretical quantum algorithm capable of efficiently finding the prime factors of extremely large numbers. Why does this matter? Because almost all of our modern digital communication, our secure web traffic, our VPNs, our financial transfers.
Basically, the whole secure internet.
Yeah, it is secured by public key cryptography protocols like RSA.
Right. And modern security essentially relies on a math trick. Multiplying two massive prime numbers together to create a public key is incredibly easy for a classical computer.
Very easy.
But reverse engineering that final massive number back into its original primes is practically impossible for classical architecture. It would take a supercomputer millions of years.
Exactly. But a sufficiently large, error-corrected quantum computer running Shor's algorithm utilizes quantum interference to find the hidden periodic patterns in the math, discovering those prime factors in hours or even minutes.
That is terrifying.
Once a fault-tolerant machine is built, it will instantly break RSA encryption.
Wait, but you just said fault-tolerant machines are years away, maybe over a decade away. Why should a business care about upgrading their security today if the threat doesn't exist yet?
Because of the harvest now, decrypt later strategy.
Ah, right. We touched on this at the top of the show.
Cybercriminals and state-sponsored intelligence agencies know they cannot read your encrypted RSA data today, but they are actively intercepting it and storing it on massive hard drives.
Just vacuuming it up.
Yes, they are harvesting your 10-year strategic plans, your trade secrets, and your long-term financial data. They will sit on it for 10 years, wait for the fault-tolerant quantum computer to come online, and then retroactively decrypt everything.
Wow. So if a company is transmitting data today that still needs to be secret a decade from now, that data is already fundamentally compromised.
It is already at risk, yes. The practical step leaders must take today is a cryptographic inventory.
What does that look like?
You have to map out exactly where your long-lived secrets reside in your network, tag that data by its required longevity, and begin a prioritized migration to NIST-approved post-quantum algorithms.
Post-quantum algorithm.
Yeah, they are new classical algorithms specifically designed to withstand quantum attacks.
Okay, that makes sense. The article also notes QKD, quantum key distribution, as a defense.
QKD is amazing. It actually uses the principles of quantum mechanics to secure the communication itself. Remember the Born rule we talked about?
That observing a quantum state inherently collapses it.
Yes. QKD sends the encryption keys encoded in quantum states, usually photons. If a hacker attempts to intercept and read the key in transit, the mere act of observation permanently disturbs the state.
But the receiving party instantly knows the channel is compromised.
Exactly.
You literally cannot spy on it without breaking the laws of physics.
It's the ultimate tamper-evident seal.
All right, so we have covered the incredible potential for disruption, both the positive commercial returns and the severe security risks. So how does a modern professional actually build a team and launch their first pilot program without wasting a ton of money on science experiments?
That's the million-dollar question.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The article points out something super counterintuitive. You might assume you need to go out and hire a room full of PhD theoretical physicists to even start looking at this technology.
Right.
But you don't.
Not at all. Building an effective quantum capability is about blending new logic into standard computer science. Your best strategy is paired work.
Paired work.
Yeah. You take a data scientist or an applied math expert and you pair them directly with a senior software engineer.
Okay, but how do they upskill to understand qubits and interference if they don't have that physics background?
The ecosystem is actually incredibly mature right now. Your paired teams can utilize free vendor labs, dive into the extensive Qiskit documentation, and take short, highly focused courses on linear algebra and noise-aware circuit design.
So they don't need to go back to grad school.
No, you integrate this directly into your existing analytics pipelines. Your data scientists can literally use the Jupyter notebooks they already use every day to start sending jobs to cloud QPUs.
So what does that actual first pilot program look like? Let's say I'm an executive and I want to deploy a 90-day pilot plan to prove value to the board.
First, you must pick a single, tightly scoped, measurable problem. Classify your candidate problems carefully. For early hardware, the article suggests starting with a variational routine.
Give me the ELI5 on a variational routine.
It is a back-and-forth feedback loop between your classical prep cooks and your quantum master chef.
Okay, I'm following.
The quantum computer runs a short, shallow circuit to evaluate a problem, hands the result to the classical computer. The classical computer tweaks the parameters based on that result and hands it back.
It just loops continuously.
It loops continuously to find the optimal answer, all while keeping the quantum operations short enough to avoid that decoherence we talked about.
Right. And the key to proving value in that 90-day pilot is establishing a baseline, right?
Absolutely. You have to run classical baselines, use the exact same input data and constraints on your standard servers so you have a credible apples-to-apples benchmark.
So you can actually say, look, the quantum approach was this much better.
Right. You define success up front. Are we looking for a specific accuracy threshold, a speed improvement, or maybe a reduction in computing cost?
And the article makes a crucial point here, too. Treat current devices as experimental tools. You use them for learning, not for full mission-critical production.
Exactly. You set clear go or no-go criteria at the end of the 90 days. You track technical metrics alongside actual business KPIs like time to insight.
Right.
In the near term, you will mostly use classical simulators for rapid prototyping and then use brief bursts of actual QPU time on the cloud purely for validation.
This strategy keeps the executives and the board aligned because there is a very clear risk budget and measurable progress. You aren't just playing with lasers in a lab. You are feeding live corporate data into hybrid workflows and preparing your underlying architecture for the hardware leaps of tomorrow.
Building that muscle memory is everything.
You are building the organizational muscle memory now, so when the fault-tolerant machines finally arrive, your business leaps forward with them instead of just scrambling to catch up.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Which brings me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want you to mull over as we wrap up. We talked about Richard Feynman earlier and his foundational belief that quantum computers could eventually perfectly simulate nature.
Right, the simulation of electron interactions.
Yeah. If we follow that trajectory to its logical conclusion, if we eventually reach a point where we can simulate, discover, and design incredibly complex molecules, supermaterials, and life-saving drugs with absolute precision and zero physical lab waste.
It's mind-boggling to think about.
It is. How might that completely redefine what the words manufacturing and raw materials even mean for the global economy in the next 50 years?
It forces us to reconsider the entire supply chain of innovation, really. If simulation fully replaces physical trial and error, the barrier to creating miraculous new materials becomes purely computational.
It is a profound shift to think about as you start exploring this landscape for your own organization.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Smart Keys podcast. We really hope this deep dive cut through the jargon and gave you the clarity to start having strategic conversations about quantum computing with your own leadership team.
It's definitely the time to start.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you do not miss our future deep dives into the technologies shaping the business landscape. And if you want to dig deeper into the specific hybrid workflows and security protocols we covered today, we highly encourage you to read Felix Römer's full article, We've put the link right there in the show notes for you to access.
It is a phenomenal blueprint for any team looking to build a resilient, forward-looking architecture.
Until next time, keep looking ahead.